content of this program is to provide nutritional education only. This program is not meant to take the place of your primary care physician. The FDA requires us to let you know that our products are not meant to treat, prevent, diagnose, or cure any diseases. As an empowered individual, you have options available. We are honored to have one of the founding fathers of epigenetics here to guide us with the best options to obtain or maintain optimal health, Dr. Joel Wallach. Welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. The content of this program is to provide nutritional education only. This program is not meant to take the place of your primary care physician. The FDA requires us to let you know that our products are not meant to treat, prevent, diagnose, or cure any diseases. As an empowered individual.
Record.
I've got the record going
On Zoom. Say something else.
I got it.
Okay. Zoom record.
Zoom. Yes, Zoom is recording.
We didn't get an announcement that Zoom is recording and there's no red dot.
Really?
Recording in progress.
How's that?
Perfect. Sherry?
Okay. There we go. All right. I show that we're streaming. I show that we're ready to go. Let's go. So everybody is coming into the room. So you've been in the waiting room. Thank you so much for patiently waiting. I hope you enjoyed the music. My name is Becca Dukes and welcome to Daily with Doc. This program is being brought to you as a resource that enables you to help yourself. I'm all about doing it yourself. I'm all about being an empowered individual and not relying on somebody else to tell me what I can and can't put in my mouth or around my environment. And in this program, there are going to be some things that don't do this, don't do that. Yes, do this. But it's only because the information to support these things has been researched and researched and researched, and pathology reports that prove that what is going to be said today in today's program are accurate and true. Now, if you are watching us on the live stream, you are more than welcome to join us here in the Zoom room with us in the meeting and ask your questions of the good doctor that we have with us. feel free to go to dailywithdoczoom.com. And for those of you who are here with us, make sure that you are following us on YouTube. That's with Critical Health News. That's the channel. Also on Rumble, Critical Health News. And if you're a Facebook user, follow us on Facebook, Critical Health. We want to make sure that the information is available. Feel free to share it. Share it to your own channels, share it with friends. And especially if you have somebody that has one of this or any of the symptoms that are mentioned in our show, you heard the information for a purpose. Share it with them so that they can hear the information also, and they can then make an educated decision to choose health, choose wellness, and do it through nutritional options. Because folks, we are not chemical deficient. We are mineral deficient. We are nutrient deficient when we are just plagued with so many different negative health symptoms. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I am privileged and honored to be the hostess of this program where we present Dr. Joel Wallach. Dr. Wallach has an amazing and incredible, I want to say pedigree, but that's not the word. I mean, his whole resume and everything that he has done in his short 83 years, starting at the age of 9, is absolutely incredible in building information that people can actually implement into their own lives without having a prescription. And he has done this through being a student, being a pathologist, being a veterinarian, being a naturopathic physician, all around the world. He is helping people. Now, Dr. Wallach, welcome to Daily with Doc. I know we're hoping that we have a special guest on with us as well. So we're keeping our eye out for him, but go ahead, Dr.
He is
Wallach.
here, Becca. He is in the house.
Oh my
Just
goodness.
need to make him a co-host.
Oh, fantastic, folks. I'm excited about having Dr. Wallach on every day, but when we can put these two men together, two veterans, one from Air Force and Army, the other a retired Navy SEAL, it is just an honor and privilege because these two have worked together to do some incredible things. And if you have watched Dr. Wallach other places, he's mentioned this gentleman's name, Marvin Ropp. Marvin, Dr. Wallach, join me here, please, because I know you've got some amazing things to share. I'm going to add you both to the screen if people would stop jumping around. And welcome, gentlemen. So yes, Dr. Wallach is holding up the book Prepare, which they both, including Dr. Wallach's wife, Dr. Milan, who is retired from the Chinese Air Force, correct?
Yes, 10 years, Chinese Air Force.
And
Marvin
Dr.
Ropp.
Wallach, share with us and start us off with the work that you and Marvin have done, because it's incredible in the story of the cause and cure of so many different diseases, where you can say it, I can't, but it's an incredible story that I think the world needs to hear. So welcome, Marvin.
Thank you, Marvin, for being on. Thumbs up.
Okay, I guess my audio's on. Is that correct?
It's on. You're on now. Let's
Okay.
Let me give a little introduction here, and then we'll turn it over to you for a while. But a little introduction. Remember that I'm the guy that I was working at the Yerkes Primate Center with the space monkeys. And I ran into the first case of a non-human case of cystic fibrosis, and I recognized it, being a pathologist and having done 20,000 autopsies by then. And so I took slides from these baby monkeys and sent them to experts in cystic fibrosis at the 5 medical schools and said, I think this is cystic fibrosis. What do you think? But I didn't tell them the slides were from monkeys. I just said, these are pathology slides. And they assumed it was from people. And they said, oh, yeah, these are classic examples of cystic fibrosis. And then I wrote them back on this because they sent that to me in their letterhead. We're talking 1976, okay, on their letterhead. So I wrote them back and called them and said, hey, I think we may have an animal model here because these are slides from a monkey. And then I got permission because on their letterhead, they said it was cystic fibrosis. They allowed me to do biopsies on the other 24 baby monkeys that are being groomed to go to space. And they all had cystic fibrosis because the people who were in charge of the diet of this colony had taken the monkey pellets away from them with all the vitamins and minerals in it and just gave them fruit and vegetables. And all these baby monkeys had the nutritional deficiencies, which resulted in the cystic fibrosis. And when I told them it wasn't a genetic thing, that we could give them all the baby monkeys they wanted with cystic fibrosis to study, they fired me, just abruptly fired me. And my wife had died. I had 4 little kids, and says it was a kind of a crazy time. And to make a long story short, I started going to all these events and trade shows and everything, looking for something. And I ran into these naturopathic schools. I'd never heard of naturopathic doctors before. And so I went to make a long story short, I got a job teaching nutrition at the Naturopathic College in Portland, Oregon. It was NCNM, Naturopathic College. Okay. National College of Naturopathic Medicine in Portland, Oregon, teaching nutrition. I said, well, I'm here. I might as well take courses and get the degree, which I did. Graduated in 1982 as a naturopathic doctor. And then I realized the naturopathic doctors couldn't help many people. You'd see 2 or 3 people a day, or maybe 10 people a day if you're really good at it. But there was insurance didn't pay for their services and everything. So people weren't flocking to naturopathic doctors. So I began to do my own lectures up and down the West Coast. And that's when I decided to build an army. I have many, many slides saying, look, we got to build an army here of trained people. And, now we have the let's see here, what do you call it? The health coaches. We have the health coaches now, okay, which are certified and they get a certificate. And we have, I don't know, maybe 1,200 certified health coaches now going around teaching other people how to do this sort of thing. But what I was running into at that time, remember all these birth defects. That's why my thesis is in the Smithsonian Institute's National Treasure, because there are no genetically transmitted birth defects. There's no autoimmune diseases. They're all nutritional deficiency diseases. And Marvin Ropp had just kind of retired from being a Navy SEAL, a decorated Navy SEAL, 25 years in the Navy?
That was 20 years, Doc.
20 years, okay.
They wouldn't let me stay longer because they said, hey, you done enough for us. It's time for you to become a civilian.
Well, we appreciate all you did. And he's a co-author in this book, okay, with Dr. Milan and myself, and all his story is on the back, not all his story, but a summary of his story is on the back of the book here. We're very proud of Marvin, okay. And so basically, he is from sort of the Northwest. We're talking about Utah and Idaho and Washington and Oregon and so forth. And they had a very high rate of muscular dystrophy, all right, not because of a genetic thing, but because of the eating habits and the location, because of what was in the soil, what was not in the soil. And so Marvin jumped on this and helped me. I couldn't be there every day. I had, my practice up and down the West Coast, and I was trying to see as many people as I could. And so I couldn't just stay in that area forever. And so Marvin kind of took over and really worked with these families that had kids with muscular dystrophy. And I have to say that we got rid of muscular dystrophy. It's a nutritional disease, and it's not, it's a nutritional deficiency disease either during pregnancy or immediately after pregnancy, okay? And so it's not one of those things where it's a genetic disease. And tell us some of your early experiences with these kids. You're already in the longevity program, and it may have been American longevity at that time when you first came in. Was it American longevity when you first came in, or was it?
when I first came in 2002, it was American Longevity. But when I went full time in 2008, my wife and I went full time as longevity coaches. Basically, joined your crusade, Doc, January 2008. And we've been doing it full time ever since. So, one of my first case of muscular dystrophy was actually that I really started making the connection was in 2008. And then what ended up happening is that in working in Indiana, I got into a community that is known to have a large percentage of their children born with birth defects and also muscular dystrophy. Now, I never made the connection to muscular dystrophy and Keyson's disease until one day I was talking to Doc, and I said, this is January 2009. I said, Doc, I says, I said, there's this one community that's just a large number of children born with muscular dystrophy. Can we do anything for them? And Doc says, what? Says, where's this at? I says, well, it's Adams County, Indiana. And so I says, that's the same as Keyson's disease. And of course, I remember him talk about Keyson's disease and says, really, I did not make that connection. Of course, I was just learning a lot of things. And that's one thing Doc taught me is in the early days, Marvin, if you can, I told Doc, so how am I supposed to go out and teach people what you're doing? I said, Marvin, you don't have to be a PhD in comparative pathology. All you have to do is learn how to recognize the symptoms of a failed system. For example, you've got neurological disorders and you've got digestive disorders, but going back to musculoskeletal. So muscular dystrophy falls into a musculoskeletal problem. And so he said, just learn how to connect the dots. And that's really how simple it is. You'll be able to walk circles around doctors. And so, okay, well, that sounds simple enough. And so now I had no idea what that meant at the time, but as time went on, I understood. So that connection, I made the connection of the dots. Make a long story short, March of 2009, we went out and I take that back. It was not until I have my dates wrong. It was 2008, 2009, 2010 is when I start working with the Amish communities in the Midwest. But then I came across this community in around 2009, 2010, but it was not until the spring of 2011 is when we actually got able to get in there and do some work with the community. And by this time, we had the community was, the sad part about it was that there's a lot of medical doctors and people in the medical profession that come in and done research and promise these families help. But no help ever came. They got the data they wanted and they turned around and wrote their thesis or whatever it was. And of course, it was so-called a genetic disorder. And that was basically a major letdown time and time and time again. So when we came into that community, they just thought we're just another data grabbing, scientist that wants to get a name for himself. But we actually went around and we had a pretty large attendance in our first meeting there. Amos Wiki was there. I like to tell this story about Amos Wiki. Now, Amos Wiki, I had got him started he was in southern Indiana, but he grew up in Adams County, was diagnosed as limb-girdle muscular dystrophy at an early age. And by the time I got introduced to him in 2009, he was in a wheelchair at age 38 years old. And so we had him on the products for over 18 months, and he was able to get up out of his wheelchair and walk. Now, bear in mind, the older you are with muscular dystrophy, you have a lot of scar tissue develop and build up and things like that. So scar tissue is very difficult to deal with when you're dealing with muscle tissue. But if you get a hold of these young kids that are showing the first symptoms of muscular dystrophy, we get them on Doc's protocols, we see results very quickly. And so let me kind of run a little bit through here. So let me go back to Amos Wiki. So Amos Wiki was there at our first Dr. Wallach seminar in the Adams County, Indiana. And we had this outdoor building that's called the buggy shed. It was packed full, about 150, 200 people. Doc, would you say that?
Yes.
Yeah. So Amos Wiki had came up early. He had hired himself a chauffeur to bring him up because Amish don't have, they have horse and buggies. So he came from Switzerland County, Indiana, which was in southern Indiana, came up to personally meet Dr. Wallach. And he wanted to meet this guy. Look, this guy is able to get me up out of the wheelchair and walk. So Doc had a little bit of personal time with Amos Wiki before we started the seminar. I was out there getting everything ready. And so unbeknownst to me, I did not know Doc had something up his sleeve. When Amos Wiki came out there, he was sitting in his wheelchair up front, and Dr. Wallach comes in and starts his lecture. Of course, about half an hour into the lecture, one of these skeptical Amish men stood up and said, okay, Dr. Wallach, if you're so sure of what you're saying, when is it going to be when Amos is going to get up and walk? Well, now Doc had just prepared for this time, and it was so funny because all of a sudden Dr. Wallach stops his lecture and he turns over towards Amos. And, if you could just visualize Moses holding his staff over the Red Sea, and Dr. Wallach points to Amos, Amos, get up and walk. All of a sudden, Amos lifts his head up. He gets up out of his wheelchair. He does a couple of 360s and sits down in his wheelchair. Well, all of a sudden, everybody in that room starts speaking Dutch. Now, I can speak Dutch because I grew up Amish. I understand what they're saying. And Doc looked at me and says, oh my, did I offend these people? What am I doing? So are they going to crucify me or what? And so then Doc immediately had to admit, okay, I have to admit, I already knew that Amos could walk. We just kind of role play this because Amos was not able to walk 18 months ago, but now he's able to because he's on this product. And this is the product we're going to talk about. So the hush, it kind of settled down a little bit. And so we got their attention. But with that said, we collected a lot of data. And Doc, do you remember Levi's Levi?
Mm-hmm.
They always had Levi's Levi, which is the grandfather's son was Levi, and his grandson's named Levi. He was 10 years old. Now, Levi's Levi, which is the grandson of grandfather Levi, got on the products at 10 years old. And at that time, Levi's Levi was not able to play basketball. He could no longer shoot, when you shoot the hoops in a basketball, you kind of squat down and shoot it. Well, he could no longer squat and kind of do that jump when you serve the basketball in the hoop. So I'm not a basketball player, so bear with me if I kind of butcher your basketball terms for you basketball fans. But so he would just sit on the sidelines. Within less than 3 months, Levi's Levi was able to play basketball. And so that was when we really started noticing a significant improvement in the kids that are on the protocol. Of course, we still had a lot of skepticism, and that's okay. People are entitled to their skepticism and their opinion, but it was irrefutable how little Levi, he was 10 years old, and within less than 6 months, he was able to play basketball. Now, what we learned from that little testimony is that we learned Dr. Wallach called the squat test. And what I mean by the squat test, we interviewed all these families. They have large families, anywhere from, it was not uncommon for 12 to 14 children per family, and half the kids with muscular dystrophy, the other half with not. So there's a couple things we came up with that we observed. Number one is that we took soil. We went to the local Purdue University and we got soil samples of Adams County, Indiana. And lo and behold, we discovered that the soil content of selenium deficiency was almost identical to what Keyshawn County, China was. There was no selenium in the soil. Matter of fact, by law, the feed companies had to put extra selenium in the animal feed in order to prevent white muscle disease, stiff lamb disease, and mulberry heart disease. Matter of fact, mulberry heart disease was first discovered in Adams County, Indiana, which is actually a muscular dystrophy of the heart muscle. So all of a sudden, these dots start to connect. And Dr. Wallach, I've never seen such an excited scientist in my world. He was in his element. He was collecting notes and things like that. Now, we were not allowed to take pictures of the Amish because they refrained from us taking pictures, but we did. One family allowed us to take pictures of the back profile of them. And so we have those documented. And so as we take collection, we took hair samples and things like that of all these families. And what was interesting is that we discovered some very interesting things. Number one, we discovered how to detect muscular dystrophy in these children long before the symptoms were available. So the first symptoms of muscular dystrophy were the kids by 7 or 8 years old, they were starting to fall and stumble when they ran in school, when they're running, they play softball or running, playing kick the can or something like that. When they run, they start stumbling and falling because they're losing strength in their quads, their quad muscles. I assume that's what you call it, your thigh muscles, the quad muscles that we call quad muscle, thigh muscles.
Yeah.
Okay. They're starting losing strength in that. And you start seeing their calves getting bigger and bigger. And eventually they could not go up and down stairs. They had to pull themselves up the stairs and eventually could no longer go up and down stairs. Then they knew, within 3-4 years, they're going to be in a wheelchair. By the time we're 12, 13 years old, they're using the wheelchair. But what we discovered is long before those symptoms came on board, we discovered that if they have these little kids, as young as 2 years old, at 2 years old, we would have them place their hands on their hips and feet shoulder width apart. We had them squat down, straight down, and come all the way back up. Those who had muscular dystrophy or were headed towards muscular dystrophy, they could not do the squat test. Remember that, Doc?
Mm-hmm.
It was a simple little test, and it was amazing. These kids could still run. They could still run up and down stairs, but they could not squat down and come back up. Okay, because they did not have the strength in their quads to do so. And within 3 or 4 years, they would then start to stumble. And so if we caught it early on, we got them on the protocol, and they had no problems with the squat test. Matter of fact, we've got evidence of kids that within 6 months' time, they were able to do the squat test before they could not do it. So early on, prevention is a key right there, and that we discovered. Now, as they mature into their disease stages, different stages of that scar tissue buildup, it was more difficult to. We were able to stop it from getting worse, put it that way. We saw some improvement, but not back to complete reversal of it. So the key was get them on the products, do the squat test, and we went through all those families. We didn't have to do blood tests or nothing like that. We just did a squat test. If they failed the squat test, guess what? We bought them on a product. And just like those families who did it, those children were healthy. And so I have a handwritten testimony of Levi's Levi. By the time he was 15, he was an adult now. He was working on a construction crew, a roofing crew. And so he told me, he said, Marvin, I can go up and down that ladder with no problem. The only thing I can see is that my legs are not quite as strong as my peers are. Instead of carrying 2 bundles of shingles, I can only carry 1 bundle of shingles. Well, that's a pretty good accomplishment as far as I'm concerned. He was not in a wheelchair. And so we have a handwritten note from him of his testimony, and it's actually available to the public, and it's on a website. We have all the muscular dystrophy information out there. It's a great little test, Amish handwritten note, a 15-year-old, and he just said, he just told me, well, this is what I do. Well, can you put that in writing? So, okay, well, sure, I'll put it in writing, not a problem. So we did that. So Doc, so credit to Doc. I'd like to tell this side of the story because Doc does not like to brag about himself, but I'm going to brag about Doc for a second here. And he kept saying, oh, this is a bombshell. This is a bombshell. And of course, we got more information from Purdue University, and we just, the soil analysis in the gardens, the Amish people in the gardens, they were raising food out of the gardens. And we noticed that it was the Amish in that Adams County were having the problem, not the non-Amish. The non-Amish were buying their food from the grocery stores. They didn't have any issues with that. So the conclusion came is that, well, that's because there's not enough selenium in the garden vegetables and fruits and vegetables that are raised to feed their families, because they had large families and they were basically feeding their families with a very low selenium diet. Matter of fact, not enough selenium in the soil to sustain healthy reproductive capability, according to Purdue University for ag industry. So you think about it, the agriculture industry had this already nailed down, but no medical doctor that came in there previous to our research ever made that connection and never made that suggestion to the families of Adams County, Indiana. Something else we discovered, Doc, that was just phenomenal. And Doc got caught on this very quickly, is that every single mother, every child that was, every mother had given birth to a child with muscular dystrophy, she was also gluten intolerant. We went back to the next generation. The grandmother was gluten intolerant, and we were able to go back 4 generations, the great grandmother. Every single female that had a genealogy with children with muscular dystrophy, every single female mom that given birth to these children were gluten intolerant. So what does that tell us? Well, first of all, the mother is not digesting the nutrients like he should because of damage to gluten. And second of all, if you're eating food that is not as low in selenium, that just expands the problem. Something else we discovered that was really profound. Now, we discovered this later on, a few years later, but we went back and looked at the records, and lo and behold, there it was right in front of us. That was that 80% of these children born to these Amish mothers and Mennonite mothers, Hutterite mothers. Now, this is a wide spectrum. 80% of these children born with so-called genetic disorder, premature babies, birth defect, or some kind of a genetic disorder, birth defect, right? They were conceived late summer, winter, and fall, late summer, fall, and winter months. 80% of these children. Now, that was a simple observation. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. But once again, as Doc taught me, connect the dots, Marvin, connect the dots, okay? So what we found out is that what was that mother doing in the spring and early summer months that reduced the risk of having a child with a birth defect or so-called genetic disorder? What was she doing? Well, guess what she was doing? She was out in the garden. She was working the garden, getting plenty of sunshine, vitamin D3, and was getting enough nutrients from those fresh fruits and vegetables to continue to develop a healthy embryo. That has, I just got off the phone with a lady 2 days ago, and she had 2 children. The first one was born 4 weeks early. The second one was born 4 weeks early, but it had a birth defect. And sure enough, that child was conceived in the month of November. This is so, it's mind-blowing. It should be Nobel Peace Prize stuff. It's mind-blowing that a little Amish boy from Missouri can figure this out. I don't know how that's possible, Doc, without divine intervention, but I believe in divine intervention. But Dr. Wallach, you brought this, you had pioneered the study. So I remember very vividly when I dropped you off the airport, June of 2011 at Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we were a little bit early. I ran in real quick to make sure that we can check your bags in. And they said, oh, sure, come on in. It's about 5 hours before your flight. And so I came out in my rental car. Here was Dr. Wallach. And I'm going to say, I know Doc won't say it, but I'm going to share this. And Doc had his sitting in the passenger seat. He had his head like this. He was going like this. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. The world is, oh, my God. I wish my mom and dad were alive to see what's about to happen. Now, I did not know this, but Dr. Wallach's mother had just passed away 6 months before that. See, Dr. Wallach's, and I'm getting emotional when I share this because Dr. Wallach's mother believed in Dr. Wallach so much that she sold a couple of their farms to fund Dr. Wallach's trip to China with Dr. Milan to do the research on the Keyshan's disease in Keyshan's County, China. Now, unbeknownst to me, I had no idea what was about to happen. But this research we got from Adams County, Indiana, was submitted to Dr. Gerhard Strauser, the Trace Element of Research. As a result, Dr. Wallach was awarded the Klaus-Schwarz Medal of Accommodation because he was able to compare Adams County, Indiana to Keyshan's County, China, also to his discovery of cystic fibrosis Reese monkey. Those three connected dots. The science was irrefutable. Those three is what gave him the Klaus-Schwarz Medal of Accommodation. Now, to me, that's a higher honor than the Nobel Prize. And the reason why is because only scientists who discover the benefits of selenium will ever receive that award. And Dr. Wallach was the first comparative pathologist and first veterinarian to ever receive that award. So that's not given out every year. It's only given out when a major discovery is created from the benefits of selenium. Am I correct, Doc?
You're correct there. It's quite the honor. Thank you for bringing that head up. Huh. Yeah, thank you. And of course, the Klaus-Schwarz Award, it was presented to me by, let's see here, by Dr. Gerhard Strauser, who was one of the premier biochemists in the world. Okay, and he was the one who presented that award to me. Okay, there. I think it was in Arizona or Indiana, one of the two. I don't even remember. Okay, but he presented that award to me, and then just years later, for the same work, I received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the United Nations. Okay, and so that was another hoo-ha. Okay, there's a picture of me getting that award in the office for the United Nations in New York City. Okay. And then again, this is you, me, and Dr. Milan, okay, putting this book together to let everybody know what they needed to do was keep things straight, actually help everybody avoid all these terrible diseases that were said to be genetic, which are not. And so I cannot thank you enough for that history. And it's one of those things where the story is in the book, Epigenetics. It's in the book Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And it's one of those things where there's very, very few people in their lifetime get a chance to save kids. And so we're very, very proud of that. And we cannot thank you enough for all that you did to make sure that the word was out there, because I couldn't be there all the time. So you were there a greater time than I was, and you were taking care of people with that information, providing the information and coaching them. So we cannot thank you enough. And so in effect, you shared in that award, the Klaus Schwartz Award. So I'll have to buy you dinner.
Well, Dr. Wallach, I want to, like I said, I spent a lot of time with you on the phone. And one of the things, most people don't know this, but I always tell people that I owe Dr. Wallach my health and I owe him my family. And that's a whole nother subject for another time. But I want to kind of expand on this, this whole big picture of Amish genetic disorders. There's 168 so-called Amish genetic disorders last time Dr. Wallach and I checked. But what's just an absolute crime is that the medical profession has victimized the Amish communities. The bigger the Amish communities, the greater victimization. What they do is they have these geneticists come in and they do gene profile of the Amish. And then they victimize them by saying, oh, you've got this bad gene and it's nothing you can do, but you need to donate money to us so we can do research and to look for a cure. They have been doing benefit auctions in Holmes County and Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, the three largest states with the largest Amish communities, thousands and thousands and thousands of families. And they will raise, per benefit auction, they will raise millions and millions of dollars that goes to these geneticists. They will go back to the little lab and never come back with a cure. For years they've been doing this. But Dr. Wallach and I were in the office of a guy by the name of Ed Klein from Holmes County, Ohio. He was one of the biggest scammers in the community, in my opinion. And I'm going to be blunt with that. Now, on the special needs kids board, there was 12 members of the Amish communities, 12 members of the Amish communities. All of those 12 members, except Ed Klein, had special needs kids. So they were used to help support this nonprofit organization. But Dr. Wallach and I sat at Ed Klein's office. Doc, you remember that lumberyard we were at? Ed Klein's office. And I asked Ed Klein, and I was explaining this to Ed Klein, and he was just, the walls were coming up, walls are coming up, walls are coming up. And he tried to quote all this brainwashed genetic disorder crap, right? Which Ed Klein had no idea who Dr. Wallach was. So Ed Klein did not know I could speak Dutch. He did not know what my background was. But I made a very clear point. Ed, let me ask you a question. Of all, you are on the board of 12 people. I did my research before I came in his office. They had a conversation with you because we're inviting you to come to the lecture tonight, okay? With all these geneticists and the nurses that they hire to run around and make sure all the Amish families are in line with the genetic code disorders. I said, Ed says, you're the only member on that board that does not have a special needs kids. Why do you think that is? He looked at me and said, well, I never thought of it that way. He said, well, I picked up on that. Everybody else, all those 11 families, and I know them all, they have special needs kids. Why do you think they picked you? He couldn't answer the questions. Well, I can tell you why, Ed. You are a very successful businessman. You, as an Amish man, own a big lumberyard here. You are seen by the Amish community as a very reputable man, and they listen to what you have to say. They are using you as a member of the community to fleece the flock. And of course, Dr. Wallach allowed me a little breath, have a little. I kind of interrupted Doc and Ed's conversation, but then I made that comment. And Ed kind of thought a little bit. Then he came back with his genetic profile rhetoric. So I stopped him. I started speaking in Dutch to him. And remember the look on his face, Doc? Remember the look on Ed's face when I started speaking Dutch to him?
I can speak Dutch too, because that's the Afrikaans language.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, this guy realized that he's not sitting in an office with a bunch of amateurs. After about 5 minutes of Dutch conversation, I kind of set his mind straight, says, look, so I understand where you're coming from, but don't you realize that you may have been deceived and lied to? You're an instrument used to fleece the flock. So make a long story short, we had 30 minutes of Ed Klein. We invited him to come to our lecture that night at Kime Lumber, of all places, Kime Lumber. He didn't show up, but guess who showed up? Dr. Wallach. Do you remember that time at Kime Lumber where that doctor, it was 5 nurses there trying to disrupt our meeting?
I remember the disruption, yes.
Yeah. So basically, I did not know what was going on. I didn't pick up on it. I had brought Doc back from his hotel after he's doing the radio show. We went upstairs to the conference room, about 250 people, conference room. And right next to our conference was another conference room. And guess, a doctor from the local hospital, Pomerod Hospital, had rented that conference room with 5 nurses. They had a big sign out front, free health lecture. Because we had advertised in a paper, free health lecture. And they had all these gluten-free, they had all these cookies, a whole bunch of gluten stuff, cookies out front, and said, oh, and as these Amish families are coming here, these nurses would come out there, and they were all nicely dressed up. Nice. You were really nice, very attractive ladies, needless to say. They would come up to the Amish families, are you here for the free health lecture? Oh yeah, well, sign, here's a clipboard, sign here, and come over here. They were fleecing the people into the wrong conference room. And as I walked up the stairs with Dr. Wallach grabs my arms and Marvin, do you have any business cards? Like, oh yes, I have one here. So give me all this. I'll take care of this mess. So I handed Dr. Wallach a handful of business cards. He said, Marvin, you go in and you start that meeting. I'll be there in a minute. I'll take care of these guys. Now, I did not know who they were. But what ended up happening is that pretty soon I was up there, got the meeting started, and it filled up. And about a half hour later, Dr. Wallach comes in and says, okay, well, that mess is taken care of. But see, what happened is that every time an Amish couple comes up and introduce these nurses, Dr. Wallach just gets in front of them and says, are you here for the Dr. Wallach seminar? Well, yeah, this is the door you go into. Don't listen to these ladies. And so he was just in their face. And then that's what you had to do. This doctor and these nurses had the gall to come out and try to disrupt our meeting. And this is why the Amish do not have medical insurance. They are self-insured. So if somebody has a catastrophic hospital bill, the community puts together and they pay it. My insurance company, when they send a bill to my insurance company has a contract with my HMO to pay a certain amount. It was about 50% of retail. Do you think the Amish get that same break? No, they charge them retail price for every hospital visit, every office visit, everything. They only have one person that all the money comes to. And that money is held in a special fund, and those doctors make sure that man will not spend that money for anything else but hospital bills and medical doctors and things like that. He's not even allowed to use that money for prevention. That's how much control they have over those Amish people. Dr. Wallach and I went in 2010, we went to the board, the committee that manages all these different diseases, and we got a line item list of all the medical bills, over $10 million in that one Amish community, $10 million of medical bills. And we went through those medical bills, and we identified all of these different diseases that are preventable. All but one. And we sat down with the finance committee, explained to them, look, I know you're self-insured. We're not trying to impose upon what you're doing, but we can show you how to save millions of dollars if you start a good prevention program. We can teach you how to prevent these over a period of 10 years. You can reduce your out-of-pocket expenses by easy 30%, if not more, if not 50%. They looked at us, they thought we were crazy. They didn't get it. And how much has the cost of medical expenses gone up since 2010? Substantially. They don't get a break. An average baby, premature baby, costs an Amish family over $300,000 in hospital bills. Now, here comes the good news. Every Amish family that I have worked with special needs kids, those mothers who chose to do Dr. Wallach's protocol, implemented 100% gluten-free diet, got the products, got rid of the gluten in the household, 100% gluten-free in the household. That's everybody. Those mothers who did that, not a single mother since they got on the program, I have hundreds of them, not a single mother has given birth to a child prematurely with a birth defect, so-called genetic disorder, or miscarriage. Not a single mother, if they did the program correct. Now, I have a handful of mothers who decided to pick and choose Dr. Wallach's protocol because they thought they know more than Doc does. Well, they ended up having some birth defects. So I sat down with them, explained to them, look, you cannot pick and choose. You've got to go 100% gluten-free because you're not absorbing your nutrients. You've got to make sure you supplement your body with all the raw materials in order to develop a healthy embryo. Once they did that, not a problem. Not a problem. And so that is, I mean, it's so irrefutable. I mean, I deal with large families, and I deal with families that have children as large as 14, 16 children. I've seen as many as 17 children in the family. But it's not uncommon to have 6 to 8 kids in a family, 10. I would say an average Amish family is about 6 to 8 children. But there's more and more young mothers suffering from major birth defects, genetic disorders, and premature babies, and whatever. So I just can't thank Doc enough for all the stuff he's done for the Amish.
Well, thank you for the history, Marvin. We can't thank you enough. We're going to make a tool out of this because this information must get out there. We're going to make a tool out of this, and it's going to be a chapter in one of the next books. We cannot thank you enough for your service, which obviously is ongoing. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you and respect you. And thank you for a lot of that detail, which I've was not aware of in many cases, but thank you so much for bringing all that up. And it's one of those things where we have lots to do. We have lots of kids to save. We have lots of families to save. We have lots of humans to save all over the world. And we're expanding. We're just so honored to have you as part of the Army. Thank you very much. Okay, over to you.
Dr. Wallach, this is just tip of the iceberg, Doc. This is just tip of the iceberg.
Well, I agree. That's why now we're building an army, and we have, people like Rebecca here, who a great organizer, and with your information and her organization capacity, and the fact that we're dealing with communities in over 80 countries right now. We do Zooms in the UK. We do Zooms in the Philippines. We do Zooms in Australia and New Zealand. We do Zooms in Taiwan. We do Zooms in Japan. We do Zooms in just about every state in the United States and in Canada. Okay, it's one of those things where we're everywhere now, and the communication, electronics, is going to make it easier and easier and easier for us. And so, we're going to come up with another issue of the Survival Bible. We can't thank you enough. It'll be a good one with all this detail. But we'll make this tool available to you so that you can make sure that everybody that needs it is going to get that tool. Okay.
Well, I am blown away because I knew a lot, at least I thought I knew a lot, Marvin, about your journeys with Dr. Wallach and the research and stuff that went on. But oh my goodness, I just knew like the tiniest tip of the iceberg. And folks, those of you who are watching us here live in the Zoom or watching the live streams, whether you're on Rumble or YouTube or Facebook, this is information that needs to be heard. You're not going to hear it anywhere else. Where else are you going to find free information that is pointing people to something that's actually going to work instead of just asking for a lot of money to find a cure? It's already been found, folks. And that is our jobs and our passion. Marvin has been absolutely incredible. I have heard so many good things about him from more than just Dr. Wallach, that these are the type of people that we have with us here within Longevity, people who truly do care about humanity and getting the information out to them and helping them get the nutritional supplementation that the body can actually use and absorb. That is, Dr. Wallach, you're right. This is going to be a great tool. And I look forward to more conversations with Marvin here being on with us.
Yeah, with the electronics we have now, we can do Zooms all over the world and include Marvin as much as he wants to. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, around the world. And the nice thing about having it digital and having it recorded and out on these different platforms, Dr. Wallach, people can share it and share it and share it and share it. So this one Zoom right now, as I was looking, I think we had over 300 people watching.
Wow.
And that doesn't include the people that are here in the Zoom with us. And share it. Think of what an impact in a hurting world this one message could make.
If it saves one kid, it's worth it. But just think, we're going to save tens of thousands of kids with this information that Marvin laid out here.
Absolutely. And Marvin was saying how, the soil was depleted of selenium in their communities. Well, that's just like a targeted little group that we were able to figure out. Okay, it proves what Dr. Wallach says, that minerals occur in veins like gold, silver, and quadruple ice cream. So we need to make sure that we are intentionally each and every day getting the raw ingredients that the body needs in a form that it can actually utilize and be absorbed into the cells so that the body can do what it was designed to do. And that is to generate over and over healthy cells for long life.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt here if I may, just 1 second. Spring is coming.
1 second.
Okay, spring is coming. Okay, and there's going to be a lot of babies made here this coming spring. Okay, and so we need to be getting all these young couples on the 90 essential nutrients, get them off all the bad foods, get them off the gluten, the wheat, barley, rye, oats, and buckwheat, and phagopyrines, and all these bad things, so they can get the nutrition so the babies will be born healthy. I got the Klaus Schwartz Award for 3 things. One was a cystic fibrosis discovery, one for the muscular dystrophy discovery. And Marvin, how much time did you spend with Jerry Lewis?
Well, this was interesting. That's a whole nother subject about Jerry Lewis and Violet and all this research they submitted to Jerry Lewis and the Jerry Lewis Films production. Now, with that said, on and off, I was on the phone with Violet more than once, at least half a dozen times. We faxed them all the results and things like that. But what's interesting is that I got a phone call from Jerry Lewis, but I was not able to take the call. He just left the message, and then I never heard from him again. But that was after he got fired.
Yeah, they fired him, and he brought them the cause, prevention, cure of muscular dystrophy. They fired Jerry Lewis, shut down the telethon where he had raised $2.6 billion over 46 years for them. They fired Jerry Lewis, put a gag order on him so he couldn't say anything. What a terrible thing the Muscular Dystrophy Association did. But we're so glad that you and I were able to spend time with him so that he actually got the information. And he knew before he died, which was just a couple of years later, he knew that we had found the cure. And I was just so happy about that part.
Now, I remember that phone call we did it was actually a 3-way phone call with Dr. Wallach, Violet, his secretary, at the Jerry Lewis Films production in Las Vegas, Nevada, in spring of 2012. And so she says, "Gentlemen, I cannot answer your questions." And Dr. Wallach's wisdom, he says, "Well, Violet, can you say yes or no to my questions? What do you mean?" And Doc said, "Well, since you live in Las Vegas, is the sun shining?" "Well, yes, of course it is. Right now it's daylight." "Okay, you get the point." Then Dr. Wallach asked her a bunch of series of questions, and she said, "Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no." And guess what we found out? We found out that Jerry Lewis had a gag order on him from that series of questions. She wanted to talk so bad, but she knew she could not do it. But we were able to draw the information out with yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. That's Dr. Wallach's interrogation technique that he hasn't used yet.
Yes, special training, special training. Well, I know Dr. Wallach, he has to get to his next program. We just thank you so much, Dr. Wallach. You have a fabulous day. And folks, normally we have Q&A where people can come and raise their hand and ask questions. And I know we have a full room full of questions, but I just think I couldn't stop it. Okay, forgive me. The information that was just shared, I could not stop. So if you are on and you have questions, please go to dailywithdoc.com, use that contact us and send in questions. Marvin, I look forward to many, many more conversations with you as we are sharing these stories that are so full of hope, so full of light, coming from a heart. I mean, folks, you can see it in his face. He has a heart for people like Dr. Wallach. And I'm going to brag on you because you don't. I've heard some of your stories, some of your seminars. I've heard stories about you. You did 20 years serving your country, and you were not done serving humanity. So I don't know which you feel is greater, your 20 years as a Navy SEAL, or the how many years, what, 30 years, almost 30 years now?
Well, I've been on the longevity products for over 20 years, but I've been doing this full time since 2008. And I can honestly tell you, it's a lot of fun to shoot big guns and blow things up, but it's much greater rewards when you help people, especially people who have lost hope. They have lost hope. Yeah. When you can sit down with them and give them a glimmer of hope, it is so rewarding. And maybe we'll have time to talk about my wife, Julie, and I, how we went through struggles with our infertility. And so that's a whole nother separate story. And I says, this is just tip of the iceberg. And I do not mind sharing my testimonies and my experiences because I think that gives people hope.
That's it. And that's what I'm here. I mean, because I was in a very dark place. And I was searching and I found my hope. I found my answers with Dr. Wallach, his message, and the longevity products. So we're at the end of our program. I just want to thank you and all that are watching that have served in the military. Doesn't matter what country, you are standing up and supporting your country, serving for others. Thank you so much for your service. I have a few people that I truly appreciate who are Navy, in addition to Army and Air Force. So Dr. Wallach is Air Force and Army. My father, Army. I know that our co-hosts, some of their family have been in the military, and we greatly and appreciate all the sacrifice that they have done in the past. And for you, Marvin, I know that sharing this message has added some other sacrifices, but you have gotten some great joys from it as well.
Well, thank you.
So thank you so much. And on behalf of the Daily with Doc crew, we have Phyllis Anderson, Marilyn Pizzera, Sherry Browning, and Ruth Ellen Sanchez. I couldn't do this without them. And it's because of people like Marvin Ropp who have gotten out there and done some really hard work in getting information to people and collecting what is possible so that we could share it with you. So thank you everybody for joining us here on Daily with Doc. We do air Monday through Friday from noon to 1 Pacific time. Our replays can be found on dailywithdoc.com. and also on Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook. We look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, sir.